Good evening, good evening. Welcome to the Dominance Academy. I'm your host, Mr. Justin. Hope you guys are having a fine fucking weekend. I am. Finally got this damn e-bike sorted out. Chain issues, power issues, electrical shit. Man, give me a motor, give me some gasoline. I'm happy. I don't know what's going on with these e-bikes. But it's a fun project. It's a fun project. So, but yeah, and it's been raining like crazy here all day in New York. So I've just been working on my book. That should be coming out, well, hopefully soon. Hopefully before the new year, my book will be ready. And damn, where's my camera software? Yeah, my book should be ready before the new year. That's the goal. And it's probably gonna be hefty. Probably somewhere around 500 pages or so. We'll see. Maybe 400 to 500 pages. So yeah, that's gonna be the deal there. What's going on, Wicked Scorpion? Good to see you, buddy. So yeah, it's an interesting thing. Writing a book, because a lot of stuff that I understand, I take for granted, and I have to like recall a bunch of the stuff that is just like my normal everyday thinking. I guess that's one of the challenges of coaching as well, because I have to recall the stuff that is just normal for me, normal in my everyday living, to then teach you guys how to properly integrate it into your lives. So they say, when you teach, you learn twice. That's what how the saying goes. So yeah, it's an interesting process, doing, writing, stuff like that. But, but yeah, so in my coaching, I was, it's always a subject of, well, how do you begin with polarity? How do you start things from being, casual, being democratic, like that sort of thing, and bring it into something that has more defined roles, and and just polarity? Like, how do you bring that out? Going from just regular stuff where you're always checking to see, and always taking into account feelings and perceptions and all this stuff, and then situations come up and you don't really have structure in which to deal with them, and then to go from that into having a very structured situation, a very structured situation, and clearly how to deal with situations, like no matter what comes up, and I see that it can be kind of challenging to deal with that sort of stuff, especially if guys are coming at this from looking at power dynamics from the mainstream view of things. So they look at their regular relationship, and then they look at stuff that's online, and it's like, oh shit, like this girl is like, wearing black leather thongs all day long, and basically lives on her knees, or like this girl in the picture. They think that that's what the girl is like. And it's like, no, like, I hang out with my girls, we watch movies, we do regular stuff, like it's everyday life, but how we approach it is different. And that's what makes all the difference. Fucking hell, my dog is outside going crazy. Please excuse me just for a moment while I bring his noisy little ass inside. Pardon me. Man, that little shit. Always making noise right when it's time to stream. But anyways, so hang on a second. So that's always a big question. Like how to start this shit, right? Because I know that there's something inside you. You know, when you're with a girl and things, either the situation isn't going right or the whole thing feels not right, and you're sitting there and there's something gnawing at the inside of you and you're like, this isn't right. Like, and guys, they want to speak up, they want to say something, they want to correct the situation, but either they're afraid, which is typically the scenario. He's usually afraid of what might happen, afraid she might get upset. And typically this means that he's afraid that she's going to leave him. Okay, it's all just fear of abandonment, essentially. So basically, so they're afraid of it, or they just don't know how. Like, they don't know what to do. They don't know what's going on. And so we're going to talk a little bit about that, about how to start these things. And it's actually pretty damn simple. It's pretty darn simple about how to get these things going. So it really just breaks down into three main categories, three basic categories. And it's not too complex, but how you go about implementing this stuff, that's when it gets a little bit, well, challenging, right? Challenging for some, I guess. So let's take a look. What is that? So I like to help those who are new to discipline in relationships, and I often encourage guys to try it, right? Because I live this, right? I know the benefits of this. I've helped couples change, and I know couples who are in polarizing relationships, whether it's just, say, like a domestic discipline, or they live a full-on BDSM lifestyle. And so I know the effects. I know the positive effects of these things. And there are studies out there that show this. You can look them up. Maybe I'll go back in the description. I'll add the links to the studies. But it showed that people who are like long-term relationship couples who engage in BDSM practices, whether it's just bedroom only or there's a 24/7 dynamic. And this is and what's come of these studies is that they found that people who engage in these practices, in this lifestyle, that they have higher levels of trust and lower levels of stress. And then the regular couples, who don't, they just kind of have your regular, stress-filled, confusing, amorphous relationships. They have lower trust and higher stress. And that makes complete sense, because one of the cornerstones of BDSM relationships is communication. We talk about everything, and we don't just talk about like everything on the surface. we spend time digging under the surface of things because we need to understand subconscious motivations. We need to understand fears. We need to understand traumas. We need to understand, minor pains, not necessarily traumas, um, certain beliefs about certain things, and then we can sometimes push through them, like we push into them, and sometimes beyond them. And sometimes this practice is sort of like exposure therapy, where the subject is given something that they're uncomfortable with, but in small increments. And over time, they become more and more accustomed to that thing. And now it's no longer something to be feared or have anxiety about or some sort of belief about. And and that's largely one of the main things that happens within a DS relationship. This doesn't happen in regular relationships where you're sitting down and you're like really discussing your fears and then saying, okay, well, we're going to do something where you learn to face this. Like, that's not regular. Like, regular is just like, oh, working, going to school, taking night classes, working on your career, having your hobbies, going out for drinks with the boys, checking in with the boss, right? Taking taking 1 or 2 vacations a year with the family, planning for college, like just regular boring stuff. And who you are essentially as an individual, as an identity, is never challenged. Who you think you are is never challenged. It's all just considered, this is it, this is the belief, and this is how we're going to continue. And that's just how it goes, and that's it just goes on and on and on. And then that's when things start to get a little bit screwy. And because you have basically layers of illusions on both people, and then they start interacting, and over time, this produces various triggers, and no one wants to talk about the triggers. They just work off the triggers. And then there's like passive aggression, there's codependence, there's all this other shit. And then they start going to, couples therapy. But it's like at that point in time, it's already done. Like by the time couples start going to therapy, it's the relationship is a dead man walking, right? They're on death row. They're alive, but there's a date that they're going to be executed. It's done. Okay. This sort of stuff, this sort of introspection should be dealt with from the beginning. You should be, and that would tell you if this person is fit or capable of going into those dark corners of their mind, the dark corners of their heart. And you don't want to be with somebody who's super reluctant to go into those areas, because that's where their true self lies. That's the thing. That's where the shadow self lives. And you cannot be an integrated person where you are being authentic if you keep your shadow self locked in a corner and away from the view of the camera. That's not how it works. So in many DS situations, not all of them, right? Not all of them. Some are just as surface level and driven by sex and kink, just like regular relationships. But many, they do choose to push through and start digging at these layers to try to get to that essential, authentic self at the core. And it's not easy. Sometimes it's not fun. Sometimes it is fun. But it requires a certain type of personality. Someone who is not afraid. Someone who's they're curious, and they might be afraid, but they're not allowing their fears to change what they're choosing to do within the relationship. And this is an important quality, right? This is why, of my 5 criteria when meeting a new woman, that curiosity and enthusiasm have to be there. They have to have a certain level of excitement about knowing what's behind the curtain. And maybe they don't know how, to look behind the curtain, but they want to do it anyways. They want to figure it out. And this is a useful quality. This is an admirable quality. And so my girls don't have a lack of introspection. They don't have a problem with being shown parts of their true self, because this is what will happen, especially you as the dom, as the man, as the leader. First, you must do it yourself. You cannot be a leader unexamined. You cannot be a leader and say, I know myself, when if I were to sit you down and ask and say, well, how much have you actually dug up? How much do you actually know of yourself? And in that question, are you going to be defensive? Or are you just going to lay it out as though it's just regular, plain, and totally neutral? So, how we deal with these situations really reveals where we're at. And so if you want to be that guy, if you want to be the person that if you want to be the person that she falls into, you first have to do the dismantling that you inevitably will do for her. So you can't be sick and then say, I'm going to cure you. If this was like an illness, she's not ill, but in that sense, you cannot be a doctor and be afflicted with some kind of illness and then tell someone else that you're going to make them better. It doesn't work. So you have to get yourself aligned. You have to peel off the layers. You have to scrape off the crud that you think is your identity. And then you can start operating authentically. And then sort of leading by example, you can bring her into this, because when you are operating authentically, it sends a signal, not to her conscious mind. Her conscious mind will just find whatever it is you're doing is like attractive, but her subconscious mind will pick up on this, and it will draw her in. Okay, unless there's a lot of fear, and then it will repel her, and that's okay, right? Because we're all on our paths. Okay, I had a girl who was like this, and she was drawn to me magnetically through the conscious, but her subconscious, there was so much fear there. And it was interesting because there also wasn't very much pain. There was some pain, but I guess I can't really make any claims about her pain because it's all subjective. What one person might find scary, another person finds is like totally normal or not that big of a deal. So I can't really say, whether it was like high amount or low amount, but whatever it was, she had some fear in there that was so strong that she was unwilling to pull back the curtain of herself. And no amount of encouragement, manipulation, various tactics to get her through the act of just grabbing the curtain and pulling away and looking behind and seeing parts of herself that she doesn't really want to see. And she just couldn't do it. And at that point, I had to let her go. And that's okay. It didn't feel good, but no real breakup feels good. But I had to let her go, because it's like if you're walking on a path and your pace is a certain footsteps per minute, and theirs is another footsteps per minute, and they don't match up, it like after a while you're going to just start pulling away. And that's just how it goes. Like at first it might be like, okay, unless your different speeds are very drastic, but if they're somewhat close, but say yours is a little bit faster, you're going to stay together for like a little while, but then your pace is just going to eventually pass them. And that's all right, because we all have our path. We all have the time, our own time scale of when we deal with these things. And who knows, maybe that my placement in her life at that time it wasn't about us being together, but actually us separating. And this act, because I made it very clear of what the problem was. And she understood, she knew, and she knew that she had these blockages. But it wasn't like, I'm hoping that in that separation, this is what allowed her to go, maybe I need to really look at these things. Maybe I need to really dive in deeper with myself and start examining and taking off the layers, holding them up to the light to see if they're transparent or opaque. And if they're transparent, you have to let them go. And that's for all of us. So, and I was able to do this with myself many years ago. So this is just regular practice. It's no big deal for me. It doesn't cause me any discomfort, right? The ego permeability is just, it's a non-issue for me. Okay. But for people who are, say, like uninitiated, it's going to be really fucking uncomfortable. And, I'm sitting there like, what's the big deal? Come on, let's go. Right. Let's talk about these things. Let's move through these things. Right. And, but it is what it is. Right. And you have to accept people where they are. It doesn't mean you have to stay with them. Okay. You just allow them to be where they are and you move on. So, like, back to what I was talking about with the guys who come to me, one of the first questions a man may have at the beginning of having like either discipline in their relationship, structure, DS type stuff, is where to start with the rules for the home. And he's wondering like, well, what rules should he make? And it's an easy trap to get into the creation of long lists of rules because you're excited or you're really curious and you're enthusiastic about this stuff and you want to like really make the thing happen. Okay. Yet at the same time, principles such as, punishing disobedience and disrespect can be fairly vague and offer minimal guidance. So you can't, if you wanted to say, okay, well, there's going to be discipline here, there's structure, I'm not going to accept any kind of disrespect. All right. Like that's ending up with like a loose hold on the reins in this way. Okay. I believe in being clear and setting standards which your woman will live by with regularly. Okay. Which means they have to be simple. So if you say there can't be any disrespect, like what the hell does that mean? That you have to be very specific of what it means to disrespect you. And it's going to be different from guy to guy, right? What is found as disrespect to one man is going to be different to another man. But you have to know what these things are. Otherwise, you're, like I said, you don't really have a firm hold on the reins. And that can lead to misguidance. Okay. So I'm a fan of making things clear and concise and easy to follow, right? You don't want things to kind of get lost in interpretations. Okay. That's the worst. You don't want interpretation going on. Okay. So, so you may follow your standards very well and rarely end up getting spanked, but they will keep her learning from you and under your clear tutelage and oversight. Okay. So, and that's the main purpose anyways, right? And so it's not about it's not like setting up this sort of structure so that you can spank her. Okay. That's not what it's about. Okay. But the idea is that she's learning. Like the whole point of having structure in anything, right, is to transform. Okay. Like you look in a business, they take in some rookie and they want to transform him into, say, like a top-notch sales associate, right? That's the track that he's on. And it doesn't have to start at the bottom, like say like middle management. He wants to become like upper management. There's a transformation that happens there. It happens in the military. It happens in sports. It happens in religion. It happens in exercise. It's all about transformation. That's the point of structure. It's not just to keep things in line. It's to keep things in line with, providing discipline, but it's also about growing from one state to another. And that's the whole point. And spanking, for example, if that's what the regular punishment is, and in domestic discipline, that's the main thing. It's used sparingly, right? Like if you use it often, this is a sign that your leadership must be questioned, right? Because that's like a last resort. So that means that your communication is off. That means your methodology is off. Your aims are off. How you're teaching is off. Perhaps your ego needs to be checked. Okay. There's a lot of things, but usually it comes down to, who you are as a man and what's coming of that. All right. And one of my clients, like he's experiencing this, like this ebb and flow of his ego kind of seeping into the structure and changing it. And he's noticing, he's like, yeah, like I got that feeling that my ego got involved here, and it changed the dynamic, which then gave the woman a different experience of his leadership, this tainted version of his leadership, which then gave her a particular emotional reaction. It made her recoil and pull back from his gravitational field, okay, instead of being drawn into it. So these are things that you learn as you go along the way. It's not like if you train with me and you're going to like get everything straightened out perfectly, and then you just apply it and boom, everything's on point. It doesn't work that way, okay? You actually need to scuff your knees, right? That's just how it works, right? And that's the way it is with everything, okay? In every endeavor, whether it's business, sports, health, hobbies, anything really, it's good that you fail. It's not a good thing to always win. It's not, okay? It makes you better by experiencing failure or setbacks and inconsistencies, because it gets you reflecting and it gets you wondering, what is it that you need to apply? Okay. So, moving back towards the three things that you can implement into regular relationships that set up the structure, very basic. Okay. And the three standards that I recommend beginning with are language, dress, and time. These things are super easy, and it's regular stuff that's dealt with in every relationship. Okay. How we speak, how we show up visually, and how we manage time. And so the reason why I suggest starting with these three is that it's easy, right? It doesn't look special. Okay. It's not like you're saying, okay, every Tuesday you're going to be wearing the spiked panty liner. You know what I mean? Like they sell these things, like it's this rubber panty liner. Okay. That looks like a pad for periods. Okay. And it's very thin rubber, and it's contoured on the inside, like for the inside of her thighs. And then the surface has these little rubber spikes on them, just these like cones, tiny cones. And so she kind of like puts that in her panties and then puts her panties on. So there's these little spikes like pushing into her pussy like all day long. Nice little thing. They sell the same thing with bras, like a bra insert. So they're like her breasts are just being poked all day. I saw somebody make one of those where it's like this foam curved pad that can be found in bras, and he like pulled them out, and they took thumbtacks. Okay, not push pins. Okay, push pins have the longer handle and you hold it like this. Thumbtacks is just flat and you push it in with your thumb. So he took thumbtacks and put a dab of glue on it and then pushed it through the pad, and just had the inside, like just all these like thumbtack bits. And then he slipped that on the inside of his woman's bra and she had to wear that. I imagine that would be quite a bit more uncomfortable than the rubber spikes. But anyways, so the three things: language, dress, and time. Okay. So remember, we're not looking for an excuse to give a spanking or to punish. Okay. Rather, we're beginning to get both man and woman established in leading and following. That's the whole point. Okay. Is to transform into designated roles. And that's the core of marriages and long-term relationships. We're looking to set standards that will be helpful and good for the home. That's the point, okay? I mean, aside from transformation, that's the result. So having some clear rules help a woman get into practice with following her man's instructions and seeking to please him. It gives the man practice in taking the reins of his woman and the home. So there's that, there's a deep give and take between the man and woman as the rules are established. He gives his concern and his attention to her, and she gives her conscientious obedience to him. And she receives the care and protection she needs, and the man receives his woman's beautiful obedience and a peaceful home to return to each day. That's really what's going on at the core. Spankings are only there to bring her back into line. Okay, it's that reset button. And it's an interesting thing, okay, because yes, spanking is a physical act. It can be painful depending on how much force is applied. If you're using a tool or if you're using a hand, your hand. But it's largely an emotional thing. And I can't say this directly. I've never been spanked, but I've done many spankings. I've seen many spankings. And I know I could just by watching the shift in the receiver's energy, right? You can watch a shift in like their musculature. It's like at the beginning, there's this tension, almost like a resistance to what's happening in the moment. And that seems normal, right? That like the brain is like, wait, what's happening now? And there's this shock to the system. There's adrenaline release and all this stuff. And then as it continues, I see this release, this relaxation, almost this acceptance, this surrender, this submission, and they're brought back into that state. But you can literally watch the body, the muscles in the body release tension, and they get softer and they kind of like slump a little bit. It's very subtle, but you absolutely can see this. And it's an interesting thing to see. And for my guys who are in relationships where this is being implemented, they get to see it as well. Like their woman will be acting a certain way, and then after the spanking session, she's 180 degrees in another direction. She's softer, she's quiet, she wants to be held, she's just open, she's surrendered. There's no resistance in her or in the relationship. It's just gone. The shit's been completely reset. And so like that's the point. That's the reset button. That's the reset function. Okay. So let's look at the first one. All right. You can get her started by making sure she keeps standards for her speech. Keeping the tongue in check is part and parcel of keeping our whole behavior in check. All right. So this is for everybody. If you have language that's full of slang, that's full of profanity, that's full of lazy speech, okay? Instead of using like affirmative language, you're saying yeah or uh-huh, right? And this is it's socially acceptable, but it's just weak. It's just weak, and I don't know. It just has no substance, has very little substance. And so when you start changing your speech, when you start watching your tongue, you stop cussing or you don't cuss as much, and you do your best not to use filler words like and okay? And then it changes the way you become more aware of how you're presenting yourself. It's a similar thing that happens when you start working on your posture. If you just like, okay, I really want to change my posture, and then you just say, okay, I'm going to be very conscious about keeping my spine straight, my chin tucked a little bit, and make this a habit of mine until I don't think about it anymore. In doing this, it will change your entire demeanor. Right? And people might notice, like, damn, like, why are you like uptight or something like that? And you can't fall for that. You can't fall for someone disagreeing with whatever it is that you're doing with your own life, right? You say, nah, I'm just working on my posture. I like the way it feels. And that's it. Okay. And he's like, well, you look funny. It's like, yeah, that's okay. I'd like to correct my posture. Or same with your speech. Okay. You sound like a nerd, right? You sound uptight. You sound like a square. So that's quite all right with me. I want to clean it up. And that's the thing. Like, when you start correcting yourself, it makes other people abundantly aware of their bad behavior. Much like the client that I was telling you about with the couple, where they were, ribbing each other and making fun of each other, joking around, all this stuff, like just minor playful insults, okay, that you would think otherwise would be just lighthearted fun, okay? And I'm like, listen, that's you seeing eye to eye. That's not leader and follower behavior. That's not man-woman behavior. That's not husband-wife behavior. That's the behavior found of two buddies. And last I checked, we don't fuck our buddies. So you're going to have to choose one. Either stop fucking and continue being her buddy, or stop the buddy behavior and continue fucking. So he decided to change the buddy behavior, and he stopped engaging with her that way. And it became really fucking apparent that she was alone in this and how bad that behavior looked. And this is why people don't like it when you start cleaning up your act. They start trying to pull you down. Okay, it's the old crabs in a bucket mentality. When someone starts to try to climb out, they could work together and they could all climb out. But a crab tries to come out, they try to pull that crab back in. You don't even need a lid on a bunch of crabs. They just pull each other down. It's a very weird behavior. But that's what, it's where the crabs in a bucket thing came from. It's real. So people will do this as you correct yourself, because it makes their behavior become, more obvious that it's not in alignment. It's not correct. And, I encourage you to just not fall prey to that, not fall prey to the criticisms or the pressure that now you're no longer like your peers. Fuck them. Okay. Like, seriously, fuck your friends. Like, if they've got something to say about whatever you're doing with your life, they can go fuck themselves. Okay. Anybody can go fuck themselves. All right. This is about you and your relationship to you. So you don't want to be a hypocrite. So you cannot correct someone's behavior that you are doing yourself. You can't tell her to stop cussing if every other word is a swear word out of your mouth. Okay. So, but I was saying, like, how the posture changing, this will then radiate out and start changing your other behaviors. You'll just, trust me, try it out. Like, really spend time consciously correcting your posture. No slouching, no slumping, okay? And this will start changing the rest of your behavior. It'll start radiating out. And the same thing happens with your language. When you start cleaning up your language and start speaking something akin to proper English versus some kind of slang Gen Alpha nonsense, okay? It radiates out. It changes who you are to yourself, and then how other people can perceive you. So if we can do one, we can usually do the other. And I don't suggest you insist she speak like a, proper Victorian lady, okay? But to set a refined standard for her speech, you should make sure it is clean of vulgarity, lewdness, and profanity. So, as a spanking man, this is not something I need to spank my woman for. Okay. She is, she's lovely in speech. However, in a popular culture, literally flooded with vulgarities, and many children hearing them regularly from their parents, learning clean speech can be a battle. It can be a bit of a struggle. So she needs to know clearly that it is wrong. She needs to know the right and pure way to speak and why it's good. So it's important for when you're teaching to not only just present what's expected or present the rule, but allow them to understand why you're doing it in the first place. What's the point? So I suspect a woman who has been connected to, some kind of culture like that may need regular spankings to assist her in learning pure speech. Expect her to need firm correction on your part. She needs to know clearly that there'll be no bad language. And, I and others also recommend, and this is something that I've done, I've seen it done, is washing her mouth out with soap. Now, I don't mean like what's really meant of washing one's mouth out with soap. It's not like soap and water and scrubbing. It's really just taking a bar of soap and letting them stick it in their mouth and they just hold it there, right? As an appropriate message to a woman with a dirty mouth, right? You got a dirty mouth? All right, well, it's going to get cleaned. Oh, you don't want to do that? Well, you can leave. And you have to be like ready to do that. Remember, the axe, the hatchet, and the compass. That axe stays with you at all times. She doesn't want to take correction. What's the point in her even being there? If she does not have any desire to be corrected, to follow, or to change behaviors for the better of the relationship or your future children, then what's the point? At that point, her ass means nothing. Her tits mean nothing. Her pussy means nothing. Her mouth means nothing. Her entire body means nothing. The tone of her voice means nothing. Her beautiful hair means nothing. All of it becomes useless at that point. A woman who is unwilling to follow you is useless to you. There's no point in her being there anymore. So understand that mouth soaping is very undesirable. Like, try it. Take a bar of soap and stick it in your mouth and keep it there for 15 minutes and see how you feel. Right? And once it's done, like, no one wants to repeat it. And so guiding her in words helps her become a virtuous woman. You're not going to find someone who's virtuous who's speaking with a vulgar mouth. You're just not going to. I've not seen that in my life. Maybe you have. I don't know. But I've not come across a virtuous person who talks like a sailor. So it helps her be a virtuous woman, which ought to be your aim. Remember, the whole thing is about transformation. And believe it or not, it'll also help keep your home clean and keep your children, your future children, from being polluted by their very own mother. Right? We don't want to have that. So setting standards of speech is very, very personal for your woman as well. Your woman learns to walk within your guidelines in a personal, intimate, daily part of her life, which is her words. She learns by your teaching to be restrained in something so close that comes from within her. Your guidance to your woman in this way and others touches her within and without her being. So just by correcting her speech, this not only just changes her exterior, right? And you're sculpting that which is presented to the world. In doing so, it has a profound effect to her internal workings. And this is part of touching her core without directly touching it. It will start to change her behaviors. Okay. And you might be thinking to yourself, well, My girl doesn't even fucking listen to me now. So get rid of her. You're thinking, man, I could never do this. Like, she would fly, soap in her mouth, she'd be furious, or she'd laugh at me. Get rid of her. Why keep a woman around who's unwilling to follow you, who's unwilling to take correction? Now, maybe she sees through your bullshit. Maybe she sees that you're a fool. Maybe she sees that you're undeveloped. Maybe she sees that you're a needy or angry male and not a man. And that's why she laughs you off. Or she's just rebellious. But either way, it's not going to get fixed until you as the man start taking the lead. Taking the lead with yourself, with your behavior, with how you see yourself, how you talk to yourself, how you talk into the world. Cleaning up your speech, cleaning up your posture, cleaning up your fucking clothes, right? Like, I know it's like, popular have like ripped jeans, okay? It makes you look like trash. It makes you look like a fucking hobo. Quit walking around with ripped clothing. It's stupid. Oh, no, it's cool. Leave that for fucking children, okay? Like, are you a child? Or are you working to transform into a grown fucking man? Okay? Like, learn to present yourself as a man, not some boy who's following trends. Okay? It's not worth your time. So, that's speech. Okay? And how that looks is, it changes from guy to guy. Okay. Like I said, for me, I don't like yeah. I don't like uh-huh. I don't like those sounds for answers. I don't like sound effects for answers. I want to hear clear answers. Yes, no, I don't know, maybe, like whatever. Just clear English, clear words, preferably with my title. So, yes, my lord. Yes, my king. Yes, Mr. J. Yes, sir. No, sir. No, Mr. J. That's acceptable. No interrupting. That's another one. Do not interrupt me, and I'm not going to interrupt you. Why? Because interrupting is fucking rude. It's not sophisticated speech at all. It shows that you have no impulse control. So I don't have a lack of impulse control, so I'm not going to interrupt you, and you're not going to interrupt me. That's how civilized people talk. All right? We're not just a bunch of fucking orangutans like screaming at each other, trying to fight for the mic. Like, that's not what we do. That doesn't happen here. Okay? Volume. That's another thing for me. My volume will rarely raise, very rarely. And therefore, my woman's volume will follow the same pattern. She will not raise her voice. The only exception is if there's an emergency, right? I'm not paying attention and something's gonna, car's about to hop the curb and hit me, right? Like, that's a reasonable reason to raise your voice. Where there's some sort of emergency, something's caught on fire. Great, makes sense. But outside of that, outside of emergencies, there's no reason to raise your voice. Any and every point, whether you are angry or scared or super happy, whatever it is, it can all be expressed within the confines of a natural speaking voice. There's no reason to raise your voice that someone could hear you across an auditorium. Okay? Not necessary. You're not on stage. You're not performing. You don't have to project so the people in the back can hear you. You're having a conversation, or you're relaying information, or you're answering a question of mine, or following a command. So tone is very important, right? And another one for me is verbal gratitude. Now, granted, this is more so a verbal extension of a particular mindset, right? Because gratitude is more so of a mindset, and what you hear is just an extension of that mindset. But I think it's very important to voice gratitude, to express gratitude. And this, I think, is good for everybody. I think that we don't appreciate and say thank you enough. So many things, especially today, we take for granted. You go back long ago when people had farms, when winters were harsh. Um, you think of like when this country was just developing, okay? And you got a family, say, like going from the East Coast to the West Coast and search for gold or whatever. You know what I mean? They're trying to settle in California, and like at least like a couple of your kids are going to die. You know, um, and so I think when things are difficult, they allow you to be appreciative of the things that you do have, because you could lose it tomorrow, or it's very difficult to get, so you might not have it tomorrow, such as a meal. So that when you have a meal, you're full of gratitude of like how it was, how you got it, and who prepared it, and all that good stuff. Okay. And I think that because we've become so technologically advanced as far as satisfying our needs and our desires, especially if you live in a major metropolitan area like, say, New York City, where it never shuts down. There are stores open 24 hours a day. If you want to find something, you can pretty much find it in New York City. Anything you can find here. And often just with a few presses of your smartphone, and you can get it sorted out one way or another. And so the sense of gratitude is lost because of that, because of this ease of consuming, this ease of satisfying our desires and taking care of our needs. Super, super easy compared to like a couple hundred years ago or a few hundred years ago. Is bad, right? It was very bad. So things were appreciated more. I mean, look at the stuff that we have. Like, you go back long ago, there was no industry, there was no factories, there was no assembly lines. Like, if you wanted a chair, it had to be made by someone, by hand, which could have taken many hours or even days to complete. And so when you got that thing, it felt different. It meant something different to you, right? Because you had to wait. And of course, there would be gratitude for that now, because there was sacrifice, there was energy put into this thing. And we've lost that. So I have in my relationships a continuous reminder of gratitude, of her saying, thank you for this, thank you for that, whether it's an experience, whether it's a lecture, whether it's a punishment or a reward. If something is coming from me to one of my girls, there's gratitude. And when there's not, I have to, if it's forgotten, and this happens sometimes, usually when there's heightened emotions or heightened arousal, right? Like after like delivering multiple orgasms or something like that, permitting a number of orgasms, their mind is scrambled, right? Their brain is like cooked oatmeal at that point. So sometimes the gratitude is lost because they're just smoky brain, like fog brain. Okay. So afterwards, if they don't say anything, I have to remind them. Okay. And I don't take it out on them because I understand the situation. Well, the best I can. I mean, guys don't get retarded from having an orgasm. Okay. Our brains don't shut off. Okay. And turn into zombies. But this happens to girls, right? They can and do like just turn into mindless zombies after they've had either one or many orgasms. But aside from that, right, gratitude is very important. So those are some of the things that I have in my situations, my relationships, and my dynamics where speech is concerned. Okay. And that's not very long. I just have just a handful, because that's all I need, really. Okay. It doesn't have to be super particular. And sometimes I will correct certain things. Like if the grammar is off in a message, I'll correct it. And that's because all three of them, English is not their native language. So it's to be understood, right, that there's going to be a language barrier. So I will correct the smallest details sometimes in their communication, especially when it's written. All right, so moving on. The point is that you have to sort out what's appropriate for you. Okay, what speech patterns do you want to see? Do you want to hear? And then do you follow this yourself? Okay. All right, so the next thing is following your standards with dress. Okay. And when she's like really into you, right? When the girl's really into you, she thinks about what you desire and what you command when she goes to the store to find apparel, right? You have your preferences, the things that you like, what things that you find her looking good in. And she's really into you. She's going to want to satisfy your visual needs, right? Or your visual desires. Okay. So like when she thinks about what you desire, when she goes shopping for clothing, and when she gets dressed every morning, this is on her mind. Okay. Her mind is tuned close to your words and your desire. Okay. And, in my dynamics and many like it, the dress standards fit a bit basic, a basic idea of modesty. Okay. Like surely they can look nice within that modesty. They can look modern, edgy sometimes, or like cool, but it's the base foundation is modesty. And this is sometimes like the arms fully covered, or if the arms are uncovered, it's in the home, right? Like a spaghetti, like a tank top with like spaghetti straps, like those sort of like lounge type tops that girls wear. Okay, it makes your tits look fantastic. Like I love those, like the heather gray. Like that's for indoors. Okay, outdoors, there should be some level of modesty where you're not showing cleavage all over the place. You're not doing this, you're not doing that. The only times that I will have that happen, like say like showing cleavage, is when I'm feeling in a certain mood. And that mood is wanting to toy with the minds of guys around, right? Like I'm a bit of a sadist, so I like to fuck with the heads of people, right? I like making their heads turn and like look at us, or like look at her cleavage, right? And sometimes when I'm feeling a little extra playful, I'll say like, hey, like go up to the bar, get our drinks, right? And by the way, like pull down your top, or undo a couple of buttons there to show more cleavage. Just so I know that when she's standing there and I can observe it, I'm watching the guys just like staring at her tits and shit like that. Like, and just knowing like, yeah, that's my girl, like, in a very minor way, taking control of your brain. So I'm taking control of your brain because I set that up. Okay. I could have said, put your sweater on, and it covers everything. And he, would just take a quick glance to see who's there, and that's it. Okay. But that's just me. Okay. So modesty, simplicity, and dresses for women are enough to set the mold. Okay. And the styles will evolve, with time. And, if you keep it up, she'll learn to adapt to these situations. Again, especially if she's really into you. If she's not really into you, she's going to be like, no, I want to wear my clothes. I want to show up how I want to show up. Again, why would you want a woman that is not willing to follow your lead? Okay. It just doesn't make any sense, because when she's out in the world, if she's your woman, she's a representative of you, right? And are you trying to clean things up? Again, are you trying to clean up how you show up in the world, right? Again, with your posture, with your words, with your appearance, okay? Or do you want to show up in the world like a dirtbag who doesn't give a fuck what anyone else thinks? Now, granted, you really shouldn't be taking to heart what other people think. That's not the whole point here. It's that you are holding yourself to a standard. All right. And like, do you have high standards? Or are you saying, I can go out without brushing my hair? I don't give a fuck. I don't need to brush my teeth. I don't give a fuck. I don't need to smell good. Like, why shower? Right? Like, if you really don't care, you really, really don't care about how you show up in the world and how that looks in a mirror to yourself, right? Then why bother with any sort of hygiene? Just say fuck it to everything, right? If you're truly wanting to say fuck it, okay? I don't want any half-assed fuck it. I want to see you go all the way. Stop showering completely. Stop brushing your teeth. Don't comb your hair. None of that shit, okay? So just know that she is your representative, all right? And again, like, if she's not interested in that role, she's not interested in being your representative, then why have her around? It just doesn't make any sense whatsoever. It really doesn't. Okay. So so naturally you bump into many questions about whether this or that actually fits the standards, and honest mistakes will occur. I would only punish for real negligence or real disobedience when it comes to dress, since some decisions are too subjective in choosing clothes. I've only spanked my girl for an infraction regarding dress when she's blatantly ignored my instructions. And this came after reminders by me as well, so that she knew it was well earned. Okay? I don't think she has found it difficult to conform to my will in that area, and it requires some communication and some care in choosing apparel, but she does very well. Okay? And this is just, again, this is about controlling and sculpting your reality. What reality do you want to live in? Do you want to live in the reality where your woman speaks like trash, wears whatever the fuck she wants, whether it looks trashy or sexy or cute or whorish or this or that or whatever? Like, is that the reality that you want to sculpt? Or are you just kind of like, all right, here's my little world, which is just me, and then she's in her world, and we just kind of like not integrated at all? They're just these two worlds that are just operating closely together, but they're not enmeshed. Now, you could enmesh yourselves into her, which is really what happens to most guys. They just flow into her frame. They flow into her worldview. They flow into her program and how she chooses to speak and show up into the world. And so she follows that. I'm sorry, he follows that. But that's often because he doesn't have any idea of his own. There's no idea of how he expects himself to show up, like with detail. All right? And so because of that, he's just destined to be a follower. But if you do have an idea of how you'd like to show up, if you do have an idea of how your woman is supposed to look and sound, then you have to make that clear. You have to communicate these things. And it's not about forcing her hand, really. Okay? It's not about that. I think that if you have to force too much, then it's not the right person. It's not the right girl for you. Surely there's going to be some effort in helping her adapt, right? Because we just can't expect someone to be a perfect fit for your specific needs and desires. We can't do that, okay? Maybe there's going to be some good amount of crossover, and that's great. Or manipulate them into alignment with, say, like, positive reinforcement or with corrections and punishment. That's just the way life goes. Nothing's ever a seamless, coming together of people. It's impossible. But it is possible to choose women that are not drastically far away from what you expect. So don't take some chick who fucking hangs out at the local bar all the time with ripped stained jeans and fucking combat boots and getting drunk and swearing all the time, and wow, she's like really fun, right? You guys shoot pool, you can do this, you do that, like whatever. Maybe she fucks real good, but is that the reality that you want to sculpt? Would she be able to conform to how you show up in this world and what you expect of one's speech and behavior and presentation? Because while we are all individuals on this planet, it's a bit of a community. I mean, there's communities within communities, right? If you want to look at it, like the globe is a community, your nation's a community, your state is a community, your city is a community. So it's like all these communities inside of one another. I mean, just like you and your neighbors, like that's a community. Just you and your friends, that's a community. Even you with yourself is a community. It's a very small one, but it is a community. It involves you and you. So just don't pick women who you know are too far out from your program, right? And if you want to learn how to develop a program such that it's easier to recognize women who are a good fit and who aren't a good fit, and how to bring them in, get in touch with me, okay? I've got a whole program specifically designed for developing your program. So, moving on here, like learning to follow her man in language, dress allows her to follow her man in an aspect very personal to her. So personal, it touches her every day. It also projects her and communicates her to the world, as our dress always does. So the clothing you wear communicates to other people, like what you're about. All right? Like you could be the same person, right? Let's say you're just like a great guy, okay? Nothing real seriously bad about you or whatever. And, one day you put on this shirt that's ripped with stains on it, and you got pants that are ripped with stains on them. You got these old boots that looks like you've been doing yard work in them for the past 10 years, and you go into a bank and ask for a loan, right? They're going to look at you funny. Versus if you're clean cut, you're shaven, it's haircut, you smell good, you got a nice shirt on. It doesn't necessarily have to be buttons. Let's say it's just a nice t-shirt, right? No graphics or anything like that. You got some slacks or just like clean jeans on, a pair of decent shoes, and you walk into the same bank, same guy, and ask for that loan. It's received differently. I'm not suggesting that they're going to deny the loan of the first appearance, right? That may not happen. Maybe they don't care, but it's that perception. All right. And again, you shouldn't be working towards meeting and pleasing the perceptions of other people. All right. But just know that it's there, right? People see you. And this changes a lot of times of how you're treated. A lot of times. I remember, what was it for? Was it a birthday or something? Or some holiday? I don't remember. And I was out with this girl, and we were dressed up. We were dressed up really nice. Like I was wearing a suit. She has a dress. Like, we had bits of jewelry on. We were looking fantastic. And I took her to this restaurant, and who's the guy from 300? What's his name? Oh, Gerard Butler. Now, like I walked in there, and the staff thought that I was Gerard Butler. And what's weird is that that's also happened to me at a barber shop. I don't think I look a lot like him. I don't know, maybe a little bit in the nose, but we have a totally different smile, totally different mouth. I don't know, but maybe it's close enough, because twice now I've been mistaken for him. At the barbershop, I denied it. I was like, no, I'm just me. Like, just come and shave my head and trim my beard. But at the restaurant, I was like, you know what? Fuck it. Let's just roll with this. And I pretended not to hear them. Okay. And so we were treated super special based off of just this perception. All right. Now, maybe if I was not dressed well, they would not have made that connection. Okay. But they were thinking like, oh, this guy looks a certain way, oh my gosh, isn't that guy like, and then it just starts snowballing into this perception. And next thing you know, I've got the best seat in the house. They're bringing us over wine to taste and all this shit. And the bill is not the way it should be. It's far less. And so I'm like, okay, this is wild shit. It was an interesting night. So, so just know, like, you shouldn't be placating to people's perceptions, but know that those perceptions are there and you will be treated differently based on those perceptions. It just is what it is. So, yeah, it projects her, communicates her to the world, as like all of our dress does. So, and this is a really great and profound, rich arena to learn submission, is through clothing, right? Apparel also helps her grow as a woman of virtue, as does language. Modest apparel reflects her modest heart, her gentleness, her humility. As a woman, it should be an outward picture of what is within. We live in a world where countless women, many of them married, think nothing of flashing their flesh for the world to see. Right? You go to this party city, that party city, and it's just like, flashing your tits, showing their ass, twerking, like this, that, and the other. It's not virtuous. It doesn't look good. It's fucking trashy. It's trashy as hell. And we don't want our women behaving this way. Like our women, not just women in general. They're not your girls, so you don't have any right to say what they shouldn't do. But the woman who's under your tutelage, you absolutely must say something and work to correct that and bring this into alignment. Okay? She's your woman after all. So, we live in a world where a lot of this happens. Okay? Even married women, looking as if they're selling sex. Excuse me. Like they're selling sex, or at least showing themselves off like a model might do. And they're trying to be a diva. And it's all vanity. All vanity. And vanity isn't virtuous. Not one bit. And none of this would be possible if fathers and husbands did not allow it. Everything begins with you. Everything begins with the man. So the explosion of carnality and sexuality in public is ultimately in the hands of irresponsible men. That's why it's here. So when you're complaining and pointing the finger at all these hoes, understand who's responsible. It's fathers, boyfriends, and husbands. They didn't do their jobs. Reigning in their wives has reigning in your wives has a real effect on society for the good. Reigning in your children, teaching your children, it has a big effect on society. Right? It's not a game. Keep them doing what they should be doing, and keep them doing what they shouldn't be doing, or what they should be doing, and a lot of this poor behavior, a lot of this, debaucherous behavior, it will disappear. All right. But it's not like I show you once and then like it's perfect forever. It's something that you have to manage. All right. And little bits of correction go a long way. Okay. So, you want to correct course just in little increments, little movements. So it stays within like a certain lane of acceptability. Okay. Versus if you just let things deviate way off, now you're going to have to exert more energy to get it back. Okay. So imagine you're sailing a masted ship. Okay. And you've got the big wheel there, with all the spokes on it. you don't just hold it in one position and it just goes straight and that's how it goes. Like you kind of have to play with that wheel a little bit. Okay. Now imagine if you were to just let go. You let go of the helm, and eventually that ship is just going to start veering in a particular direction. And at some point you're going to go, whoa, what the fuck? We are way off course. Like let's say you weren't paying attention. Okay. Just like these the fathers of these girls were not paying attention, or maybe they weren't even there. All right. And now you grab the wheel and you're like, fuck, we're 5 miles off course. Now we've got to do all this extra work to change the direction of the sails, change the rudder. And now we've got to expend energy and time to get back to where we want to be. That's an awful way to live. You don't want to be veering off course and then pushing it back on, veering off course, then pushing it back on. That leads to a lot of fights. That leads to stress and ultimately breakups. Okay. So you should never let things fly. You should never let things ride and just go unnoticed. It was just once. It was just once that she interrupted me. I don't need to say anything. Like, geez, come on. Right. Really, that's your fear of confrontation and your fear of taking accountability for the situation, right? Because that's what's happening. You're saying, I'm taking accountability for this and I'm going to correct it. Instead of being a coward and saying, well, she's a grown woman, she should know better. No, she's got a little girl in there who's often pulling the levers. Okay. So, it's really important, a really important job as a man. If a woman is under you, or if you've got a young girl under you, like a daughter, or even like a niece, it's really important. Okay. And you need to learn how to lead. It's not just like, do as I say, and it's simple as that. Sometimes it is, but as a teacher, I've learned that everybody has their own learning style. Some people need that firm, angry football coach punch you in the chest sort of drill sergeant speech. And this is what gets through their head. Others need a little bit of a hand holding. People need really clear, short, and concise instructions. There's some people need a visual demonstration. Okay. Some people need to be walked through every motion. Everyone's got different ways of absorbing information. Okay. And so that's why like a toolbox doesn't have just a hammer in it. Okay. You got vice grips, you got screwdrivers, you got, all sorts of tools in a toolbox besides just a hammer. Okay. Because you need to be able to adjust for the job so that you can get it done properly. Okay. So lead your woman also in being responsible with time. This is the third one. So it's language, dress, and time. That means mostly that she learns to be punctual and to call if anything unexpected will cause her to be late. This is such a common situation that like a new girlfriend or a new wife will begin to grasp what it means to be answerable to her man very quickly. All right. So like a new boyfriend, new husband will need to give immediate attention to oversight of his woman. While rules about time need not be perfectionist, it is normal to expect a woman to be punctual and not be more than a few minutes late. And of course, like I said before, you don't want to be a hypocrite. You can't be that guy who's letting time slip through his hands and then telling her that she needs to be punctual. It really just doesn't work that way. Okay. So, many women, they grow up without much expectation of time, from their fathers or their mothers. And, she could show up late and think nothing of it. And so one of the first things I did was to just tell her that this is unacceptable, right? And bring this to the attention. You cannot be afraid of potential conflict. When she began repeating the behavior, I gave her a spanking, and each time she soon learned to regret it. And so now, like, after this sort of thing, it's like you'll hardly ever see that behavior anymore. At least I didn't. All right. So learning to be responsible with time is not as deeply personal as language or clothing. Um, right. But it hits in a different way. Pardon the pun. Okay. She's aware of your authority as she plans her day and goes from place to place, returns home, or whatever. Like with her language, keeping her punctual may require a number of spankings or corrections early on as she learns to be responsible and answerable to you. Later, you should expect them to drop off. It's not a hard lesson to learn and is a simple practice, right? So really, like, once you learn to be punctual, it's rare that you need to be reminded again and again. Like, this is with most people, okay? So any woman can stray. It is part of the woman's fallen nature, and best of women to have a rebellious, the best of women have a rebellious stripe. And the most virtuous can be clouded by emotion, okay? It's just part of being human, okay? So leading a woman will take your thought, your strength, and your regular attention. While it might seem overwhelming when you are new, I believe the three standards that I've just discussed, language, dress, and time, provide a strong starting point for guiding her. They teach you to be a diligent leader. They're also a blessing to her as she learns her footsteps in following you and allows her soul to be soft to you. I actually don't recommend you use them exclusively since rulership is broader than that. Okay, but this is a good starting point, these three. Okay. And you'll find other areas as you need to guide her in practicality and, spiritually, emotionally. There's a lot of things. All right. But disobedience has to be punished as well. Yeah, these three will help you get into practice. They teach you the steps and the interaction you should have and will certainly require you to spank her when needed. Begin shaping and sculpting a woman, guiding her soul, guiding her emotions, guiding her mind, making her more virtuous. And your home, or whatever you've got going on, your relationship, will then reflect into the world. Okay, this will be just one more little good thing that's being created in the world, and that's I know that's kind of hard for a lot of people to consider because we live in a very selfish society, uh, very self-aggrandizing, focusing only on your goals, and without understanding of what you do affects a lot of people. And it's tough, and you can't really. There's a lot of efforts in trying to help people come to these conclusions, that they need to be less selfish and, come out of their own little bubble. We see this online, just bubbles arguing with the other bubbles. Like, it doesn't get anywhere. Okay. But within the confines of a relationship, you can pop their bubble so that they're exposed and vulnerable. And from here, through your guidance, you can bring about transformation. Just remember that the transformation has to start with you. Don't be a fucking hypocrite. Because when you are, it looks like you're just grasping for control rather than leading from a position of power. Okay? So, I hope that was helpful for you guys. That's all I've got for you this time around. Thank you for watching live, and thank you for catching me on the replay. Please do go into the description of this or any of my other live videos and schedule a free consultation. Just click the link and choose the day and time that works for you. Otherwise, go to the website, check out what I've got going on there, and please send me an email, justin@thedominancecacademy.com, if you have any further questions. All right. Until next time, have yourself a good evening. Take it easy.